Congratulations, Henry, and thank you, Luis. Before I introduce a special guest who will introduce my friend John Quinones, I want to tell you a little story. I've mentioned at the beginning of this evening that I was proud to look out and see so many brown faces. When John and I started in this business, and we started about the same time, it wasn't like this. This was in the late 70s. In fact, I remember I was a reporter in my first job at KPIX in San Francisco, and my wife was from Chicago, and she wanted to move back to Chicago to have our family. And so I started sending tapes to Chicago. And where I really wanted to work was WBBM, where John was working. And it was the best station in the country at the time. So I sent my tape. I was very proud of it, and they get it, and the guy, news director, calls me up, and he says, "You know, we liked your tape, but we already have our Latino reporter. Only one." So my wife still wanted to move to Chicago, so I sent my tapes to WLS, the ABC station, and they called me up, and they said, "Yeah, we want you to come work here." And I said, "That's great." And I looked it up, and they already had another guy. And I thought, wow, that's great. They've already got Freddie Villanueva, and he's there, and they're going to have two Latinos. And I thought that was really real progress in Chicago. So I got to Chicago, and the second week I was there, Freddie Villanueva was no longer there. They let him go. That's the way it was back when we started. It was one of us, outside of California and perhaps Texas, at each place. And just look around and you can see how much progress that has been made. And part of that progress is from reporters like my friend John Quinones. The San Antonio SAAHJ created the Henry Guerra Lifetime Achievement Award for Excellence in Journalism in 2001 to recognize individuals who have made significant contributions to the field of journalism. Henry Guerra, the legendary voice of San Antonio, broke ethnic barriers in radio and television and helped blaze the trail for the inclusion of Latinos in the newsroom and for the fair coverage of their communities. But perhaps he is most remembered for being the city's first Mexican-American announcer to use his own name on the air. He began his career at WOAI Radio in 1939 and later became the city's first Mexican-American TV announcer and anchor. Guerra would end his newscast with his trademark sign-off, "Good night y muy buenas noches." To present tonight's Henry Guerra Award, please welcome Irma and John Anthony Campos. They're John Quinones' sister and nephew. I think you'll see the resemblance.
Thank you, Jim. It is a special night for our family because you're honoring my brother John with the Henry Guerra Lifetime Achievement Award for Excellence in Journalism. And I could tell a little story about John. He always wanted to be in the spotlight. He always wanted to be on the stage. He did a Romeo and Juliet play in Brackenridge High School, and he was Romeo. The good part was that he got to kiss Juliet, but the bad part was that he had to wear a leotard in a macho high school. We're very proud of John. And I know that my parents would have been so proud for him and his achievements tonight. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. We'd like to shift your attention to the screens for a very touching video tribute for my Uncle John that was actually put together by his sons, my cousins, Nico and Julian Quinones. They did an excellent job with the video. Very nice.
We begin at Cape Canaveral with ABC's John Quinones.
ABC's John Quinones.
And John Quinones' award-winning report.
ABC anchor John Quinones.
We here at Primetime have watched John Quinones go to many exotic locations over the years, but we and you have never seen anything quite like this.
The thing about John is that he's kind of a walking embodiment of the American dream. He grew up as a kid speaking only Spanish in San Antonio, went to school, didn't understand what any of the other kids were saying. But, you know, today he's a network TV news star.
Is America ready for a Hispanic president?
Oh, I believe so.
Do you want this divorce?
You know, it's a decision that we made jointly.
Everyone expects so much of you now.
My expectations of myself are so much higher.
He did that by working incredibly hard. And along the way, he never forgot where he came from.
When he talks to you, you know he's listening. You know when someone says, hey, I'm a big fan, can I meet you? Can I take a picture with you? Can my whole family take a picture with you? He's taught me a lot about that, to remember where you came from and remember what could be the alternative.
He connects with people because he's been in all those shoes. He's been in the shoes of a worker who's been picking tomatoes in a field in Michigan, and he's also been in the shoes of a guy who's just got an upgrade to a suite at the Four Seasons in LA. You know, that humbles you in a way that stays with you for life. There's a lot of things that happen to you in your childhood that form who you become as an adult.
And I remember when he got his first apartment in Manhattan, he brought me to the View and he said, look at this. And he said, you know, he was looking, there was lights and you know, just the city. And he said, I never thought I would see this. And I never thought that we would have this as a family.
John Quinones is an Hispanic journalist who is not solely defined as one, but informed by his heritage, rich in tradition, family, and friendship.
Welcome to Primetime Thursday. You really love these animals, don't you?
I really love them.
We left the boys of Barrio Libre in the early morning hours. Their final words, consider this your home.
He always looks out for the little guy. Whoever doesn't have a voice, he tries to give a voice to.
Every time one of India's neighbors suffers from flood, famine, or war, another wave of refugees washes up on Calcutta's pavements.
He always finds a way to connect with somebody and make the issue very personal. And that comes from years of traveling the world and talking to people that were from all kinds of different nationalities and backgrounds and walks of life.
It's a place where the expectancy of life is below 40, where probably 8 out of 10 people are out of work.
With the vigilance of a hawk, he watches over hundreds of miles of forest and its wildlife.
I can see some buffalo down in the river there.
One there, one there, one there. I mean, just in our field of view, this place is just littered with carcasses.
I think his best stories throughout the years have always been the ones where he is exposing something that people don't often know about and wouldn't know about unless he took them there.
169 years after slavery was abolished here, they are a people still trapped in a world of servitude.
That's just what John does best, mixing it up with those who are struggling, giving voice to those who have none.
You get 70 cents for filling that sack.
They're crammed into these Haitian buses known as top-tops with little more than the clothes they're wearing and dreams of a better life.
We're now paddling through the most remote river in all of Africa.
A monster called Mekele Bembe. Just the legend, at least we hope.
Wow. It's unbelievable being here and finally seeing it.
But archaeology has certainly not put an end to all the theories about the pyramids.
No matter how backbreaking, you're paying for eternity. You're paying for a ticket to eternity.
Do you envy the people in that train?
Oh, not at all. They value things that are not important to me.
Just give me a sense, if you would, John, what the feeling is in the streets of Panama tonight.
After a full day into this invasion, it is still not clear tonight who controls the streets of the capital.
So the question is, what would you do?
Let's go inside.
Hidden cameras on.
Most everything that you see on television has been tried before, except what would you do?
That's him.
They brought heart to reality television, and I think that's something that people still don't see. I think it's something that is very rare.
What would you do as the TV show?
They were actors.
I would drink heavily.
And What Would You Do is the only show where the people that are being filmed don't actually know that they're being filmed. They're reacting in a genuine way.
Much criticism as we went through as a people, you're gonna go and do it to the next person? What gives you that right?
They're ruining the black family.
What? Drugs are ruining the black family. Poverty is ruining the black family. That white girl's not ruining the black family.
What I find interesting about What Would You Do is it's not about anything scripted. There's nothing, it's one of the only reality TV shows that is in fact reality because it's about people.
Does she look American? She look American?
Oh, heaven forbid.
I think everybody that watches the show can find something that they can relate to, either directly or indirectly to them at some point in time, and they like watching that and thinking that, you know, I'm not alone in this. There's other people that might be going through the same issues that I'm going through.
A lot of people are afraid to speak up.
A fear can stop you from doing a lot of things, but it should never stop you from doing the right thing.
Well, everyone's been through hard times, and we survive them in some way. And if somebody helps you and gives you a push-up, fine.
People see in him, you know, a different face than everything you see when you're flipping through NBC, CBS, ABC. I mean, Latinos aren't really well represented in the media.
It's a long way from Spanish Harlem.
Yeah.
The thing that's so great about John is that he's still the guy I met 30 plus years ago. He's still a sweetheart. He still cares about ordinary people. He's still the nicest guy. He's still a great friend and a great father. And he's never forgotten where he came from. I don't think he ever will.
I'm proud to call John my friend and delighted you have chosen to recognize his lifetime achievements.
Loves to do what he does and will continue to do that for his whole life. And I don't see retirement as an option for him. I think he's a lifer.
Please join me in welcoming to the stage the 2014 winner of the Henry Guerra Lifetime Achievement Award for Excellence in Journalism, my friend, your hometown boy, forever Romeo, John Quinones.
Wow. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. This means, from my own colleagues in my hometown, how better can it get? Thank you to the San Antonio Association of Hispanic Journalists. Thank you, Irma, my sister, and John Anthony, my nephew, my family, and all my friends who are here tonight celebrating with me this very special occasion. I feel so blessed and I feel so humbled. I was a kid who couldn't speak English when I was 6 years old. I grew up just a few miles from here on the west side of San Antonio in Henry's old neighborhood. And let me tell you something about the Hispanic Journalists Association. When I was hired, you know, Jim talks about how there was only room for one Latino. Oh, we've got the quota. We're okay. We don't need to hire you. When we were here, the reason I was a drugstore delivery man at Blanco Pharmacies, driving an old beat up, I have to be careful how I say when I tell people, I used to deliver drugs. They presume the worst, of course. Oh, of course, Mexican. No. I delivered drugs to little old ladies who needed medicine in an old beat up Volkswagen. And the owner of that drugstore, Richard Teniente, remember Richard Teniente? Wonderful man. He would hear me reading in the bathroom, working on any copy that I could get my hands on to overcome my accent. So he knew that I wanted to get into broadcasting. But there were no positions in radio or television until there was a group of radical Mexicans who came on board calling themselves the Bilingual Bicultural Coalition on the Mass Media, or the BBC. And the BBC was this bunch of Chicanos with brown berets who would go to radio and TV stations in San Antonio and picket outside their gates and contest their licenses with the FCC, which governs the airwaves. By the way, the airwaves belong to the people, not to any private company. And these guys would say, if you don't hire a force that's representative of the beautiful population of San Antonio, we're going to demand at the FCC doesn't renew your licenses. And these stations freaked out because they didn't want to lose their licenses. And they started hiring anybody with a decent voice. And there was little Juanito Quinones at the drugstore reading in the bathroom. And I was hired at KKYX as a reporter. But it was KKYX. I was an intern for $2 an hour. Guess what I did? If you're from Texas, you understand this. The disc jockeys at that radio station had horses at the back of the studios that they would use in parades and rodeos. My job as an intern for $2 an hour was to feed the horses at the back of the studio. But slowly they let me do something on the air. The first thing I did, I remember I got to read the tag on a national commercial. And there was some new medicine that was out. And at the end, I got to say this for the first time on broadcast radio. My first words were, "Now available at Walgreens." And I was so proud. I was so proud. I would call my tias and my tios, "You got to listen at 1:12 this afternoon." Then they let me do the news Sunday nights. It was really Monday morning from 2 to 4 in the morning. We had 4 listeners, my 2 sisters, my mother, and my father. You know, the woman in that video, in that "What Would You Do" video, told us, fear can keep you from doing a lot of things, but it should never keep you from doing the right thing. She was talking about fighting racism, but it applies to so many aspects of our lives. As you know, I was born in the barrio, raised a couple of miles from here, in a world where fear dominated so much of our lives. Fear of gang violence, fear of drive-by shootings, fear of the drugs that were being peddled on the streets. I had 3 cousins who were heroin addicts and spent most of their lives in prison. But even greater than the fear on the streets back then was really more defeating than that fear was the fear of not making it in America. My father was a janitor. My mother used to clean houses on the rich part of town in Alamo Heights. I know because we would go and help them. To help the family out, I also shined shoes on Guadalupe Street. We would charge 10 cents for a pair of shoes. And I remember we'd go to the cantinas because all the drunk guys wouldn't know how much they were tipping you. And when I was 13, we did what a lot of Latino families in South Texas did. We joined a caravan of migrant farm workers. And we boarded these trucks and we traveled 1,600 miles to Michigan to pick cherries. And then we followed the crops down to Ohio to pick tomatoes. And I'll never forget being on my knees on the cold, hard ground at 6 in the morning, looking at a row of tomato plants that for a young 13-year-old boy's eyes seemed like they went on for miles and miles. And my father, Bruno, our father, Bruno, looking down at me and saying, "You want to do this for the rest of your life? Or do you want to go to college?" It was a no-brainer. Of course, I was a dreamer. I always wanted to be a reporter. As a little boy, I was very chismoso, you know. So I used to watch Geraldo Rivera on 2020. I wanted to be like Geraldo Rivera, this cool Latino. And, you know, but there were very few people who looked like me on television. But that didn't matter because the Quinones family, we had a secret weapon. We had a mother, our dear mother Maria, who was a dynamo, a woman who instilled in us the all-important and life-changing mantra that anything is possible. It doesn't matter, she would tell us, that you have to wear the same clothes to school every other day. They're clean. It doesn't matter that you have to eat and take to school bean and tortilla tacos instead of the other fancy kids with their fancy bologna and white bread. It doesn't matter. She would say, what matters is what's in here. And it's what's in here, in your corazon. You are just as good, she kept reminding us, as the kids who live on the north side of the tracks. And that's all we wanted to hear. That's all we needed to hear. And it's what so many young people today still yearn to hear, particularly kids of color. So I leave you tonight with a very, very simple message. Don't ever miss the opportunity to inspire the young. Remind them that they must ignore the negative messages that society too often throws at us, particularly the kids who are of different skin colors, the color based on the color of their skin. So remember, please inspire them and teach them to fight that fear. Thank you very much. Muchísimas gracias, con todo el corazón, Gracias. Thank you very much. Besos y abrazos. Gracias.